whole Reddit and GameStop thing.
Oof. I wish I had been there at the beginning.
Dude, I'm
Right?
not kidding. Last week they were talking about GameStop I saw it on Twitter that GameStop was like $4 a share. And I was like,
Yep.
man, I should go on and buy some GameStop stock. Just like $20 worth, you know? I am kicking myself this week because I didn't. I was like, because I was like, man, I'm not going to do that because GameStop's only going to be around for like another year or so. And then what? I'm like, I'm out $20. I could have had like several $1,000s at this point. Like, ugh. I could have bought 5 PS5s.
If you could find them.
Yeah, if I could find them. Let's see here.
Right. Yeah, no, I was looking at it. I remember I was talking with one of my buddies about it just because I had seen it too, and I'm just kicking myself for not doing something about it. It's just
Yeah,
like another
same.
one of those things, like, not buying Tesla a while ago, not buying whatever, they all just go crazy. And
Yeah, you didn't get the thing yet?
I don't think so. I don't see it.
Try one more. Let me just type it in. Oops. Hold on. Work with me here, Gmail.
Did I put it right? Yeah, I did right.
There you are. All right, now it's coming to you.
All right.
There was
sweet.
an issue. Try again. Well, what's the issue?
Just make it work.
Just
It's
work.
an issue.
All right, it says person added, so
Okay.
should be.
I'll check my Google Docs here. Should be.
Oh, I need to pull up the chat.
Oops, I moved you.
There we go. Now I'm seeing it.
There we go. Making everything look nice. Discord capture. And make you a little bit smaller so that you're not 5 times the size of me and Derek.
Yeah, that'd be great. Especially considering my webcam is like 15
right,
years old.
There we go.
So Cam used to being smaller than everyone.
All right. Did you get it yet? You got it?
I did. I got
okay,
it.
Cool. All right. Well,
Got it.
I think you're familiar enough with the show to know how everything goes.
I am.
All right. I got everything up. You good, Derek?
Yep, I got all the tabs open. I'm just going to share it on Facebook real quick, and I will be all set.
Sounds good to me. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Do you like the show and you want to help support us? Do you want us to stay ad-free? Do you want extra episodes every month? Of course you do. Then head over to patreon.com/nerdcaveretro and become a Patreon supporter of this very show. Greetings, programs, and welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Cave Retro Show. My name is Jason Robbins.
My name is Derek Diamond.
And we are joined once again by show favorite, retro gaming dev himself, Nate. What's up, Nate?
Hey, thanks for having me again. I'm happy to be here.
So we're gonna do something a little different tonight. The reason we have Nate on tonight is because once a month now, as we talked about on Patreon, we're going to do a roundtable at least once a month or every month or two. And thought, who better to talk about Metroid than to have the retro gaming dev himself join us here on the show?
Well, I am honored. Thank you.
So what about you, Derek? How has your week been, my friend?
It's been good. It's had a nice lazy weekend, which was nice, much needed. And then when I'm not at work, been spending time gearing up for episode 300 of the Derek Diamond Experience, which will air in early March.
Is that
I feel like an old man
tonight?
of podcasting.
Is that what you were
No.
recording tonight? Okay.
No, the one I recorded tonight is going to air in like 3 weeks.
Ah, okay.
No, still haven't recorded episode 300 as far as the interview portion goes. But
Yeah.
Wow, 300. You got like a bottle of champagne ready to
Yeah.
I
kick
should do
open?
that at the end of the show. Just get blackout drunk.
You know what sucks? I'm sitting here watching you guys with like your nice big headphones on, and I feel so naked. I just
Gotta
got
keep my ears warm.
I got my I got an email yesterday from Skull Candy saying that I got approved and they already shipped my replacements back. So I was hoping they would be here by tonight, but apparently they'll probably be here tomorrow. So by next week I will no longer have naked ears on the show.
Well, it's true. Whenever you get used to wearing these, if you go back to earbuds, it just feels weird. You just feels like you got stuff just jammed in your
Yeah.
ears and you can't hear anything.
And they're so echoey. Like I'm not used to it. I had to get used to the echo again using these.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Weird. So what about you, Nate? How have you been lately? What you been up to?
Been doing all right. Just living my best pandemic life, trying to, keep going. I'm developing a retro inspired game, so I'm trying to keep that project moving along with just kind of, regular life stuff going on, and just hanging out on Twitter, chatting with people about video games, doing that thing, just kind of keeping that on. If anyone wants to check me out on Twitter at Retro Gaming Dev. Otherwise, just hanging out here at home, working from home, all that stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, I really haven't done too much this past week. I've been trying to get everything ready to get my Switch and everything ready to start streaming my Switch on Twitch here, and got a big TV set up over here, and got all my cables that I need. So hopefully by Sunday I'll be fully ready to go with my new setup. So I'm excited about that, and I get to use my new 8-bit DOE controller that I got last week. So nice. It's so nice.
Very nice.
It's like
Very
That's gonna
nice.
be
Yeah,
sweet.
I want to pick one of those up, and
Yeah,
you have to let me know how it goes.
It's pretty nice. I played Castlevania for a little bit. The only problem I have with it so far is it's got the two shoulder. It's shaped like the original Super Nintendo controller, but instead of just the 2 shoulder buttons, it's got 4. And there's one right at the edge right here where you hold it, and if you breathe on it, it's so sensitive. It'll bring up a different menu. So I'm like, I gotta find a way to reroute that button and just make it a dead button somehow, because that's the only problem I have with it. And of course, it's got the 2 analog sticks on it as well. So it's like a Super Nintendo controller with analog sticks. It's so cool.
That's tough to beat.
Yeah, it was only like $30 too. I got it on Amazon, so I would recommend it. But like I said, that's my only problem with it is that one shoulder. It's just the way I hold the controller. Is my finger constantly hits it and then brings up little menus and stuff. I'm like, stop it! I don't want that menu.
There's nothing better than that Super Nintendo design, so that's my favorite.
Yeah.
So.
Super Nintendo and of course the GameCube are the 2 greatest controllers ever made.
I
Agreed.
agree.
Yep.
Yeah. But we are going to do a couple of news stories tonight before we go into the roundtable. And if you're expecting us to talk about the whole GameStop stock fiasco that happened yesterday, honestly, I don't know enough about stocks to actually talk about it. So I'm just going to wait and see what happens. The only thing I know about it is a bunch of nerds got together and stuck it to the man, and that's what I like about it.
They should have called it GameStop.
It's sort of like, it reminds me, like I wrote this on Twitter today, it reminds me of the ending of Trading Places. When they made Mortimer and what's his name lose all their money, and then they're like sitting on the beach. How you doing? Like, good, Lewis. Like, and I feel like that's the ending that the Redditor guys like get to have, because they just completely bankrupted all these like rich hedge funds that like do all these crazy practices in Wall Street. It's like, hey, beat them at their own game, man. That's all's fair in love and war. So this is kind of
I like to think they're in the Bahamas right now.
Yeah. I think I said I wish I would have bought that GameStop stock last week. I'm kicking myself right now.
Right.
because I had no clue this was going to happen. I just randomly saw it on Twitter that GameStop was $4 a share, and I was like, just go buy like $20 worth. Damn it! Next time I'm going with my instincts.
But that's all I've seen on Twitter, on Facebook, anywhere like I get news. I've seen that story dominate the last couple of days. It's been insane.
It's crazy.
I don't know any of the. I'm not a Wall Street guy or a stocks guy, so I couldn't tell you the ins or outs of it. But there's definitely a lot going on, and I think Robinhood, the trading app, is probably in some hot water right now to deal with.
Yeah, actually, I saw
preventing people from selling off their stock and
Yep.
doing some crazy stuff. So
just before we jumped on, I was looking on Twitter, and they've already got a class action lawsuit against him filed as of this afternoon. Because
not surprising.
Yeah, not surprising at all.
Yeah, you don't let people play the game when you've been, cheating this entire time. So, hey,
Yeah.
I wish I had some GameStop stock. I could have gotten in on that class action lawsuit too. Oh well, next time. Next time a company goes under, like maybe I should buy some Toys R Us stock. See how that does.
Get EB Games while you're at it.
Yeah,
there you go.
Some Blockbuster or something like that. I don't know.
Oh god.
While you read your subscription to Electronic Gaming Monthly.
Yeah. Oh man, were we ready to go into the news?
Sure.
Let's do it. This is from, who is this from? This was an email from I Am the Rampage, who keeps us stocked up on news every week, and thank him for that. This is from VideoGamesChronicle.com, and I heard about this the other day too. Sources: Capcom has overhauled its plans for a Resident Evil 4 remake. Division 1 brought in as newcomer M2 sees role reduced, sources indicate. New studio M2 has seen its role significantly reduced on the unannounced project, sources told VGC, and mainline Resident Evil studio Capcom Division 1 has been brought in to lead a new direction. At first reported by VGC last year, the Resident Evil 4 remake has been in development since 2018, led by Osaka-based M2, the studio founded by former Platinum Games head Tatsuya Minami. Little has been shared publicly about M2, but people with knowledge of the company said it was partly funded by Capcom and comprised of former Platinum Games employees, including developers from the Metal Gear Rising and Bayonetta 2 teams. The company contributed to the development of 2020's RE3 remake, with Minami taking on an executive producer role, but the startup's main purpose was always to lead the next bigger remake, Resident Evil 4. Let's see. It is believed that disagreements between M2's reduced, it was some disagreements internally that led to M2's reduced role involved in the studio's desire to stick faithfully to the template of the original Resident Evil, partly influenced by backlash to the RE3's remake, which did not include significant portions of the original PlayStation game, much to fans' disappointment. Capcom's team said it would prefer a different direction, which would see the remake inspired by the original, but with its own unique take on features. Personally, I just played Resident Evil 3, and I'm going to be reviewing it next week. And I'll be honest, I never played Nemesis, the original Resident Evil Part 3, for, I think it was PlayStation 2 that it came out for. What's up, Rampage? There he is in the chat room there, talking about your stories now, buddy. And I personally like Resident Evil 3. I never played the original, but I did really enjoy the Resident Evil 2 remake. I think it kept the spirit and the feel of the original while keeping a lot of what it was in the original game, but adding a lot too. And I don't know. I kind of was expecting the same thing for Resident Evil 4 with what they did to Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, and I'll be completely honest. I'm not nearly as familiar with Resident Evil as you are. I've dabbled in, I think, the original whenever it was remade for the GameCube, because I know everyone made a huge deal about the fact that Nintendo got a Resident Evil game. So
Yeah.
I had briefly dabbled into it, but Resident Evil is something that is, I won't say completely lost on me, but I don't know a ton about it other than the basics.
What about you, Nate? Are you familiar with the Resident Evil
Yeah, a
franchise?
little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I played 1 and 2 back in the day when they were brand new. Like the first one was amazing, an amazing experience. Never played 3 or 4, but I did play 0 on the GameCube as well. But I will say that 4 being remade, I mean, I can totally get the other ones, but 4 is probably it's kind of an interesting one to remake because it doesn't look all that old
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, it kind of has survived time a little bit better
Hmm.
than some of the other ones, but it definitely sounds like Capcom wasn't happy with whatever direction they were going with. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I played 4 on I had 4 and played it all the way through on the GameCube when it first came out.
hmm
And it was one of those games that just kind of took what was already good about Resident Evil and just made it so much better. Of course, they fixed the camera angles, they put, the third person view. And like you said, the graphics were great. All they really needed to do was just kind of just remaster it. What I was kind of hoping they were going to do is not only keep that original stuff from the original game, but just add more, kind of like they did with Resident Evil 2. I don't really know if I mean, there's a difference between a remake and a remaster. I understand that. And I realize that if you're going to remake something, you kind of want to keep the spirit of the original, but kind of make a new vision for it. But like you said, the game was so good to begin with. I don't really know why they wouldn't just do, a remaster slash remake where they just remaster everything, but just add new things to it.
yeah, and I think it's just the whole remake remaster area now is just such a sticky area. So I'm sure they're just trying to really tread carefully here with things like Final Fantasy VII remake kind of getting a lot of backlash, not being that great of a remake, and I'm sure everyone doing these is just trying their best to just really maximize whatever they're going to do, not to
Yeah.
like upset the hardcore fans and still introduce it to some new fans. So
And like you said, I think it's going to be a lot harder from now on too when you're doing these remasters and remakes of games that came out, within the last 15 to 16 years because you look at games from like the late 90s or early 2000s that jump from like I'd say the PS1 to the PS2, that graphical leap was so huge that you can go back and play games from the GameCube, PlayStation 2 era that look great. And all they really need to do is just, remaster it and just bump up the resolution because those games look that leap was so huge at that time that it's just going to get in a weird territory when you're remaking or remastering games that still relatively kind of new in that respect.
definitely.
Makes you wonder if there's going to be an oversaturation of those.
I think so. Resident Evil 2 did so well that I think it's one of those things like we're just going to get a glut of them. But honestly, I mean, we've talked about it. There's a lot of games for Nintendo that I want to see remade, especially from that games we loved from that Nintendo 64 era that really look awful, but the gameplay was great. Like that's the stuff I want to see getting remade at this point.
I still
Yeah,
say if they remake Ocarina of Time,
Yeah.
make Nintendo a ton of money.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we have the Zelda 35th year or
Yeah.
35th anniversary coming up next year, so who knows what's going to happen.
I don't know.
They have the chance to do some really cool stuff with it. I just
Yep.
hope they actually do it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Our next story comes to us from IGN.com. Vicarious Visions reportedly brought into Blizzard to work on Diablo 2 remake.
Yeah, it's another
Following the
remake.
Yep. Speaking of remakes, which funny enough, they actually remade the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy, and I
Okay.
believe also the Tony Hawk Pro Skater
Well,
ones as
they
well.
did do good jobs with those, so this is
Yeah.
a good sign. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Following the news that Vicarious Visions has been merged into Blizzard Entertainment, a new report says that the studio was brought into Blizzard to work on the Diablo franchise, including a planned remake of Diablo 2. As reported by Bloomberg, Vicarious Visions, the studio behind such games as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 and Crash Bandicoot's Insane Trilogy, has been working with Blizzard since last year, even though the announcement of its merger was only made on January 22nd. Up until 2020, the Diablo 2 remake was set to be developed by Blizzard's Team 1, which is located at its Irvine, California campus and was the go to group for reworking classic games. Its latest title, Warcraft 3 Reforged, was not received positively and currently has a 59 on review aggregate site Metacritic, which also happens to be Blizzard's lowest score to date. IGN gave it a 7 out of 10, saying it is an uninspiring remaster, but Warcraft 3 itself is still a great game nearly 2 decades later.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think? I know there are a lot of diehard Diablo fans out there, and I remember hearing a lot about Diablo when it came out back in the day.
Honestly, I think Diablo 3 is probably one of the best games of the teens, the last decade. I love Diablo 3, and of course, I've told the story 100 times here on the show about I never got to officially finish Diablo 2 because of my girlfriend broke up with me, and it was her computer. But there's a computer in some landfill right now with my Diablo 2 game still on it. So I'm looking forward to Diablo 2, honestly. And speaking of Warcraft 3, man, that thing was a turd on launch. Like, I heard nothing but bad things about that relaunch. So bringing in Vicarious Visions is a really good idea because they do have a pedigree of doing good work. And I'm excited for it. I'll play the hell out of some Diablo 2 remaster.
Yeah, I mean it's very smart of them to bring in somebody who's got a track record with remakes versus trying to do it in-house, which sounds like what they did with Warcraft 3. I think what's going to be interesting though is to see what they do with it, because I mean, Diablo 2 I played a fair bit back in the day, and it's a really good game, like tons of fun to play.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of games in that genre to come out since then that like do it, and I would maybe even argue do it better than
Yeah.
Diablo 2. Games like Path of Exile, and I think there's some other ones too that are pretty good. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with this. Where the, you know, are they gonna really expand it out and like bring in some more elements to kind of compete with these newer games that are doing kind of the same thing, or are they gonna stick with keeping it fairly, you know, to the original game, or you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if they as long as they sort of bring it out and sort of be in the vein of Diablo 3, like the way Diablo 3 plays, the way it looks, and you know, Diablo 3's it came out what, like 2012, and it still holds up as far as graphics and gameplay go. Like, that game is just it's gonna hold up for decades. Like, that game is so good. So if they just make it look like Diablo 3 and kind of have that season thing that they do, which I've done a couple of times, where you go in each season and you try to get your character, you know, as high as you can get as much loot and money as you can get. Like, that stuff's kind of fun. If they do that with Diablo 2, and like you said, expand it out, give it some more areas to explore, more dungeons, I'm completely down for that.
Sign me up.
Yeah,
I'd be interested in trying it out.
I really do think you should try out Diablo 3 if you've never played it, because you can get it on the Switch too, and from what I hear, the Switch port's great, and you can get it on PS. I think it came out on PS3, but you can get it for PS4 too. But it's great. I love Diablo 3. I played it all the way through twice with 2 different characters. That game's so good.
I should still have some credit for that gift card I got for Christmas.
Oh yeah, do that. I think you'll like it a lot. Especially
I'll check it out,
because you love the original. Like, the Diablo games are a direct descendant of like the original Zelda games, like Link to the Past and the original Legend of Zelda. Like, there's a direct lineage there, and I think you'll get that when you play the game.
I'll take your word for it.
For our last story, this is from AxeBlade07. ReviewGeek.com. Plex's new arcade feature brings retro games to your media center. I saw this pop up on Twitter the other day. Plex is already one of the best options to host your digital copies of movies, TV shows, music, and even photos, but it's picked up a new trick: gaming. You can now subscribe to the Plex arcade service, which nets you 30 Atari games and the ability to add your own game ROMs and emulators to stream anywhere. Plex has been considering getting into the game streaming for years. It already has the necessary underlying technology down thanks to its existing media streaming efforts. But unlike movies and shows, latency matters when it comes to game streaming. To help with that, Plex partnered with Parsec, a company known for its low latency streaming technology, and Han Solo did the Kessel Run in less than 12 of those. With a Plex Arcade subscription, you'll get immediate access to 30 classic games, including Avalanche, Centipede, Lunar Lander, and more. Plex worked with Atari to ensure the games are fully licensed and legal for you to use. But if you prefer your own games, you can add your ROM collection and emulators to the list. I am so on board for this. I already use Plex myself, and I have a lot of game ROMs. I'm just wondering, what can you use as far as like a controller or whatever?
That was going to be my question: is what type of controller can you use? But I mean, I love the idea of this. I love the sound of it. I'm with you. I'm all on board.
Yeah, I use Plex here too for our movies. We have a ton of movies on there, and it's very convenient. And it would be really cool to be able to use this to get my game collection on my TVs. But yeah, I'm curious what kind of compatibility it has. Like, because we use one of our TVs, we use a Roku interface. I don't know if this is compatible with that, or
here it is right here. It says, while you can use a mouse and keyboard, you're better off pairing up with a Bluetooth controller like an Xbox or PlayStation controller. For now, due to Parsec's requirements, you'll need to run your media streaming server on a PC or Mac OS device, which means it won't work on Linux, NAS devices, or NVIDIA Shield-powered servers. You can stream gameplay to Android, mobile, and TV, iOS, tvOS, and the Chrome web browser. So you'll have to use either your PC or your Mac to be able to do this, which is pretty much just like Steam.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I like this a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see if look for some reviews out there to see how it's working. Because yeah, I mean, having to pay a little bit of money, if it works well though, is probably worth it. Because like I said, I have Plex running, and I have it running on all my TVs. So if I can just pair up a controller on each screen and have my games in every room and not have to worry about moving stuff around, that's pretty awesome.
So. And this would be a cool thing for them not only to use Atari, but go to other services, game developers from back in the day. Like they could go to Nintendo and have Nintendo games. Like this would be the perfect platform for Nintendo to use to get their old stuff on for people to be able to play. And right now it's $2.99 a month for Plex Pass subscribers and $4.99 for everyone else. So $5. And it has a 7-day trial too, so you can actually go try it for 7 days if you have a Plex or a subscription to Plex.
You say Nintendo should do it, which is why they won't.
They don't like money. What I mean, I don't know what it is with them.
I think they just have too much money.
Yeah. That's the problem. They have too much money. They don't care.
Yeah.
Like, here's your crumbs, gamer boy. But that brings us to, we're not going to do this month in video game history, but Derek would like to do some shout outs before we go into our roundtable this evening.
Yes, as always, we like to shout out our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/nerdcaveretro, the ones who keep the lights on here at the show. And because you have kept us at the $50 level, we will continue to do fun commentary tracks. So
we did
this
a
past
good
week,
one this month. Oh, that
yes,
was so
we did.
Fun.
We did an episode of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, as well as the Sonic X anime, which I believe that was the first time you had ever seen that, right, Jason?
Yeah, and we coined the term uncomfortably sexy.
just watch the episode and you'll know why.
As soon as you see it, you're like, oh, yeah. I don't know how to feel about that.
Yeah. Made me feel some kind of way.
Yeah.
But so if you're a Patreon subscriber, you could check those out. We want to shout out Armez Jackson, Xblade07, Daniel Salmon, John Jekyll, aka Mixmaster, Carlos Longoria, Staff Sergeant Sketch, Randy Bailey, Tyler Watson, Justin Olson, Brandon Rutledge, and our newest patron member, Donner Party of 5. Woo! So welcome to the Patreon family. And also, you guys are responsible for the roundtable. that we're having tonight because you guys voted on it. There is a poll currently up for the February roundtable. It closes at the end of the month, so if you haven't, be sure to get your vote in. I believe it's really close right now between Donkey Kong and Star Fox for the next discussion. So, going to be an interesting one. So, if you want to be a part of our Patreon family, head on over to patreon.com/nerdcaveretro.
And tonight we're talking about the Metroid franchise. They are games that are a series of video games produced by Nintendo, one of the company's most successful franchises. Series popularity spans several Nintendo consoles, with the very first game, Metroid, released in 1986 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. We chronicle the missions of bounty hunter Samus Aran in a science fiction setting which contains many similarities to the Alien film franchise. The central plot elements are the Metroid organisms and the space pirates which try to exploit the Metroid's powers. I first played... actually, Metroid was one of the first games I ever bought with my own money for the Nintendo. I remember putting it on... I put it on layaway at Kmart when I was a kid. And saved my money, cutting grass and whatever. And I went and got it, and it was so different than anything I'd ever played at that point. Like, you know, I played the Nintendo. I loved it. I had of course, I had Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. I'd played other games like Kung Fu, things of that nature. But I never in my life played anything like Metroid to that point. I mean, from the very beginning, you turn that game on and it's instantly you feel different playing that game. That the music, the eeriness of it, and then you get in and it's not a side scroller, or you know, you're not trying to get points or anything. Like, it's a complete open world and you're just by yourself on this lonely planet trying to survive. And I have loved the Metroid franchise ever since.
First of all, I'd like to point out that this is the 35-year anniversary of the franchise, which is crazy to think that it's been around that long. But I never played the original Metroid until much later, because when I was a kid, I never owned the NES. The only time I would ever play it is if I went over to my aunt's house, and she only had the Mario Duck Hunt combo and Legend of Zelda. So those were really my only options. But I can remember the very first time I ever saw Super Metroid, and I've mentioned my uncle many times on this show that he was responsible for me being introduced to a lot of fandoms that I've carried with me throughout my life. And one of my favorite things to do was watch him play video games, and then eventually try to mimic him, and usually not nearly as successful. But I remember if I were at his old house, I could tell you the exact spot that I was sitting when I watched him play Super Metroid for the first time. And just, I remember vividly, he beat the game, and I'm sure you guys remember when you have to escape the planet before it explodes. And
Yes.
I remember like that experience, and like just feeling the anxiety of, oh my God, is he going to make it out alive? Yeah. And I played it soon after, and I've been a fan ever since.
What about you, Nate? What was your first experience
Well,
with
I go back to the beginning. I got my Nintendo probably, it was either 87 or 88. My older cousin, he had a bunch of games, one of which was Metroid, and he was kind enough to let me borrow it for a month or two. And I remember not knowing what it was. I don't even think I had the instruction manual. And I remember the feeling of just being like lost in this alien world, and in a good way though. And I remember drawing maps, and I remember, I think there may have been an issue of Nintendo Power at some point that might have had some of the maps in it.
Yeah, I think it was either the first issue or the second issue had a big map.
But I don't know that it was the whole game though. I could be wrong about that, but I remember having to draw some maps out, and I remember it being quite the adventure. And it kind of, up until that point, I don't think, like you said, you hadn't played anything like this before.
Hmm.
I mean, Legend of Zelda kind of touches on that, that open world kind of searching around, but really in the platformer genre, was nothing like it
Yeah.
up until this point, where you had no direction given. It was just come down that starting elevator and just figure it out. There's no
Yeah.
text, there's no, hints, there's no signs, there's no guy there handing you a sword saying, take this, you'll need it. There's nothing. It's just you're alone. And I think that's insane. And then pair that with the music, and it just became, it's just something amazing. So yeah, and I've loved it ever since. I mean, especially the 2D Metroids. I haven't been as into the 3D ones.
Hmm.
I played the GameCube Prime a little bit, but the first one, Game Boy, Metroid 2 was a really good game, and
Mm-hmm.
then Super Metroid's absolutely amazing. Probably one of my top 10 games of all time is Super Metroid.
Yeah,
So
it's definitely one of the best Super Nintendo games out there for that system. That game is still to this day almost absolute perfection.
Well, I think
agreed.
if you were to own a Super Nintendo and you could only pick, say, 5 games to have for it,
Yeah.
Super Metroid is absolutely one of those
Oh yeah.
games.
And
Yeah, I
It's
mean, that game had so many of those moments, like you were talking about, those just like visceral moments, like you were talking about escaping the planet.
mhm.
That one, I can't remember the name of the boss, but that boss who comes out of the lava at you as a skeleton.
Oh yeah.
That, I don't know if you remember which one I'm talking about, but I
Hmm.
remember me and my friend were playing that late one night on a sleepover, and we thought we beat the boss, and then he comes lurching out of the
Yeah.
lava in as a skeleton, and it was just like the most, like, we freaked out. It was amazing.
I remember
So
that the last time I played it, a few years ago for our Metroid month, and I wasn't streaming it at the time, but I was playing it, and I had totally forgotten about that part. About he turns into the skeleton. I was like, oh, it was like one of those screaming moments where you're like, oh crap. And that's the cool thing about Metroid. Like you said, the escape of the planet at the end is one of the most heart pounding, hand sweating moments of your life when you're a kid and you get to that point and you're like, holy shit, I just beat the mother brain. And then you have to escape the planet and you're like, you got these little bitty platforms you got to jump on, and there's this timer, and it's like everything's going to crap, and you're just like, oh my, by the time you're done, you need a nap for like a day and a half because you've just expended all of your adrenaline within that last like 10 minutes.
uh, it reminds me of that scene in Step Brothers when Will Ferrell's laying on the couch and he's all sweaty.
Yeah.
That's how you are after playing Super
Yeah.
Metroid.
yes.
And it was such a cool game because it's one of the first games that really has sort of RPG elements that we talk
Mhm.
about today, where you go through the game and you get upgrades to your person. Like you get stronger weapons, you get stronger, uh, armor, you get, energy tanks. So you have whole thing of energy tanks, and you go through the game and you're seeing certain things like towards the beginning of the game. There's a part where you see there's like there's an energy tank up in the top, and you're like, how the hell am I supposed to get that? And you find out that it's not until way later in the game you get the ice beam, you can come back and get that. So there's a lot of like backtracking in the game. As big as that game is, there's a lot of backtracking, but even still, with all the backtracking, it's still almost impossible to memorize where you're going or where you've been. It's just, you have to have like some sort of a map to be able to go by.
Yep. Yeah, and that's an interesting distinction you're making about the RPG elements, because largely, like, games, platformers up until this point, there might have been some other ones. I don't want to discount any other game that had it, but a lot of them, the power ups you get were like limited time. Mario, you get the star and it lasts for 20 seconds or whatever. You might get a fire flower that you lose, but like building your character over the length of the entire game is actually pretty new at that point, which is um, it's normal now. You don't think about it, but back then that was pretty groundbreaking in my opinion. So
Yeah. And also, it's not one of those games. Even back then, even games like Super Mario Brothers, you could, if you knew what you were doing, you could beat that game in an hour or two. Most games you could beat in a couple of hours, other than like Legend of Zelda. Even if you knew what you're doing, it would probably take 10, 12 hours to finish that game. But when it came to Metroid, it was like that game took me probably 2 years to finally beat that game without using any cheat codes like the Justin Bailey code. Like, to legitimately go through that entire game and beat it probably took about 2 years.
But I'm sure it felt gratifying when you did beat it, though.
Oh, God,
yeah.
And of
Well,
course,
I'll be honest, I've never beat it before. I've gotten all the way to Mother Brain, and I think I've given up at Mother Brain. So,
well, I had a little notebook too when I was a kid that I kept all the. Every time I got a little bit further in the game, I would write down that awful passcode to be able to go back to where you were, and I wish that game would have had a battery backup system so bad.
yeah, very envious of the Japanese audience. They had the disc system
Yep.
version, which did save. It had 3 save spots in it, so
Oh.
that would have been a handy feature. So
Yeah, because even if you knew what I've watched some people play that game on Twitch. Like Arcus has played it. A lot of gamers were playing it back when they were preparing for the Big 20 last summer, and even just to get 1/3 through the game would take him like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like, so even if you know what you're doing, it still would probably take you a good 6 hours to finish that game, probably all the way through. Like, it's crazy to not have a battery backup on that game like that. And that password system was just ridiculous for that game.
well, yeah, 24 letter codes. So.
Yeah. Ugh, hated it.
Huge fan of the passcode system here on the Nerd Cave Retro Show.
But
Not
you guys both played, and Derek, you reviewed it, Metroid 2, for the show. I still have never played Metroid 2 for the Game Boy.
It's really good, and I feel like, honestly, this, and as well as Metroid Fusion for Game Boy Advance, are two of the most underrated entries in the entire franchise, in my opinion. I don't know if you've ever played Metroid Fusion, because I know I did that too when we did Metroid Month, but if it's not Super Metroid, I think Metroid Fusion, well, I'd say Super Metroid would be number one, but Metroid Fusion would be a close second in my ranking of the games. But I really liked Return of Samus as well.
Yeah, Metroid 2 is really good. I played it a lot. My only gripe with that one was when you actually played it on a real Game Boy, it was actually really hard to see.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I got my Super Game Boy that I really dug into that one as a kid.
Yeah.
That invention
And
was so great.
yeah, it's a really good game, and I think it got overlooked because of, honestly, like, I just remember looking at that pea green screen, and it's so blurry, and the action's really fast in it, and I think even the refresh rate on the original Game Boy wasn't that great, so it just ended up being kind of this blurry mess, and I think it took a lot away from something that was like really good under the hood there. I do have a Retron 5 now, which is pretty cool, so I can hook up my original Game Boy games and play them on TV, and it's a good game to go back to. So
That's cool. I want to get one
That's
of those
awesome.
Retron 5s. That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the handheld versions of Metroid kind of got overlooked. And I feel like a lot of other handheld entries do. Like, you look at Link's Awakening, for example. It's, to me, one of the better Zelda games that was ever made. And it didn't really get that much attention because it was on the Game Boy and it had to follow Link to the Past.
Yeah. And honestly, I think Link's Awakening is one of the best games I've played for on the Switch, as far as like that, for that that peripheral, like that, the way to play that game on a handheld, because it looked so good, it played great. I think that I personally wish that they would go remake those games that didn't really get the attention that they deserved that came out for the Game Boy, like the bigger games like Metroid 2 and Return of Samus. And I wish that they would really do a remake of those for the Switch, or even the next Switch system that comes out, the Pro or whatever. I would definitely play them.
They did do a remake of Metroid 2 for the 3DS. It was called Samus Returns.
Okay. Yeah, I never had a 3DS.
It was yeah, no, it was I didn't play the remake, unfortunately, but I heard good things.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a good one. I didn't play it either, but I think they did change up a fair bit of the gameplay. Not probably in a bad way, but they definitely, I think they expanded upon um, the gameplay and how you control Samus and from the original. So it's probably a little bit different than you remember Metroid 2. Unlike like Link's Awakening, where that game is, I'd say it's nearly exactly the same in terms of gameplay. It just looks way better, which
Yeah.
I really appreciate that they didn't go and mess with the gameplay on that. And they've done other remakes with the Metroid franchise too. I mean, you have Metroid. I think it's Zero Hour. I can't think of it right now.
I think it might be Zero Mission.
Zero Mission. Yeah, that's it. So that's a remake of the first one. So, and I think there's some changes to it, but I think by and large it's a pretty relatively faithful remake of the original NES game. But I think they add in some features like a mapping system and whatnot that you would find on Super Metroid. So there's some options there for kind of revisiting some of these older games, but not really having to suffer through some of those quality of life things that make some of these. I mean, the original Metroid's awesome and I love it, but it is hard to go back to it and not have like a guide or a map and really get through it. So there's options out there. So
yeah, when I did it for our Metroid month, I used a walkthrough. That's the only way to get through that game these days, unless you're playing it. You know, you have an emulator or whatever, and I think it's on the Nintendo Switch NES shop, which is good because you can make save states and all that stuff. But back in the day, we didn't have that stuff. It was like you had to play it all the way through, or you had to get good at writing down your passcodes because we didn't have cell phones to just like quick little snapshot or whatever.
I also had a lot more time back then too. So.
Yeah, you had a whole summer to try to beat whatever game you got for your birthday or whatever.
Yep.
Them's were simpler times.
Yeah. But then, of course, we get to the Super Nintendo with Super Metroid. And I said it before, I'll say it again. One of the Super Nintendo games, one of the greatest games ever made. It still holds up, looks great, plays great, sounds great. I mean, even I took the music from Super Metroid to play before we came into the segment here. I have been in love with that game for 30 years now. I just love it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything that we haven't already said. It's in that upper elite tier of Super Nintendo games that you have to have. Like it's up there with Super Mario World, with Link to the Past. It's in that top 3 to top 5.
Yeah.
And even farther than that, one of the best video games ever made, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it doesn't get much better. I think for me, that's where Metroid really topped out and kind of its pinnacle, in my opinion, in terms of just like perfection. Things that have come after it, I think, have been good, but I think I don't think anything has quite reached that same level of just across the board perfection. Music, visuals, gameplay, controls, everything about it is just really well done, and I don't know if they'll ever quite get back to that with Metroid, but I'm hoping so.
Well, I mean, you touched on it too. I like the Metroid. I only played the first Metroid Prime game. I never played 2 and 3. I never played Other M for the Wii. but I played the original Metroid Prime, and I loved it back in the day. You know, I had a friend of mine. We played it at around 2010. He at his apartment, just play the hell out of it. And as I do like the first person sort of feel that it had, and I would love to have another Metroid Prime style first person shooter, but if in all honesty, I really wish they would do another side scrolling Metroid adventure. And with today's graphics, you know, like really beefed up graphics, great soundtrack, just give me hours of exploration and something that I can play on the Switch and just kind of chill out and play and not have to have like you know really like that first person sort of twitchiness of trying to shoot things. Like just I just want a good side scrolling like puzzle adventure game. Like that's what I want them to get back to.
Well, and the cool thing about when Metroid Prime came out is because Fusion came out right around the same time. So you got
Mm-hmm.
both. Like if you wanted the old school side scrolling Metroid, then you could play Fusion. Or if you wanted the new experience, you could play Metroid Prime.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people were not happy with the decision to make Metroid a first person shooter, but I'm a huge fan of the original Metroid Prime game. And I know it's a game that we still have yet to review on the show. And I remember playing it for the first time, and I was like, I still felt like I was back in that world, even though
Yeah.
gameplay was a bit different. It still felt like a Metroid game to me personally.
I'm with you. I was just playing it actually maybe a month ago, so I fired up the GameCube and threw it in, and it's it is, despite what I said about the Super Metroid being like my favorite, Metroid Prime is a really really well done game, and they did a lot with the first person mechanics to make it not so um, not as hard as like other first person games at the time. The controls they do give you a lot of favors, like with like
Yeah.
auto aiming and stuff that actually work really well and make that transition to 3D not so rough for you. But it's still and it looks amazing even now. Like I don't even know how old that is. It was at 2001 that it came out.
Let me see when Metroid Prime came out. That came out.
2002, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
say when it came out, I had gone from the Nintendo 64 to the Xbox, and then around 2002 is when I got my GameCube. So I was fresh off of playing Halo when I got the GameCube and got Metroid Prime. So it was like I was in that mode of like I wanted more first person shooter content like that. And that was like the perfect transition to go from Halo to Metroid Prime because it was almost like kind of like the same sort of feel, like the same. I don't want to say the same universe, but it's kind of cool space shooter to the next space shooter, and it was kind of a good, nice transition. So that I think that's really why I liked Prime so much because I was pun intended, I was primed up for it when it came out.
Yeah, and it still holds up. Like it's 18 years old, 19 years old now. It's but still, other than the resolution, obviously GameCube resolution is pretty small now, but
Yeah.
it still looks really good. The atmosphere is just like the other games in other entries in the franchise where they like get this atmosphere going with the music and the visuals that is not like anything else. And it's definitely worth checking out. I'd love to see a remake on that one just to
Yeah.
get the resolution popped out a little bit so it's not so blurry, but
Well,
it's a good game.
I was hoping they would do that for the 35th anniversary this year. Give us a good remake of the Metroid Prime trilogy for the Switch cuz that would be the perfect 35th anniversary thing to drop on us while we're waiting for a new Metroid game. At least give us a remake of something.
It's crazy because I know, Jason, you and I have alluded to this a bit on the show. Like, Metroid's been around forever, but I feel like it still doesn't get quite the attention that it should. When
Yeah.
when you think of Mario, or you think of Nintendo, you think of Mario, you think of Zelda. Metroid's been around just as long,
Yeah.
but it just seems like it gets neglected
You can
sometimes, and I
definitely
don't know why.
tell that Nintendo has some children that they don't quite like as much, you know, like because Mario gets all the loves, Link and Zelda get all the love, and then you kind of got the kids that don't really get the middle kids who don't get a whole lot of attention, like Metroid and F-Zero, and then you got
Yep,
the
yep.
redheaded stepchildren that they just completely ignore, like Star Tropics and Kid Icarus and like all
Yeah,
those
yeah.
kind of games.
Oh man. Yeah, yeah. They seem to give Metroid somewhere in the middle there. They don't.
Yeah,
It's not quite as top tier, but I mean, it has they've kept it going though. I think the thing that I'm realizing as we're talking about it, and I'm kind of looking through here, is that they once we got to GameCube, they kept all the two-dimensional Metroids as portable games, which I think is probably where I missed them because I don't do a ton of
yeah,
portable gaming. After the Game Boy, I didn't really keep going and getting a ton of portable things, so that's probably where I've missed it. But it would be nice to have a way to kind of play some of those again, to catch up on those.
yeah.
So
I'm the exact same way. I didn't really do anything portable until the Switch came along. And now I'm like, okay, I want to go back and play all this stuff that you guys had that I never played because I didn't have a 3DS or a 2DS or any of those. I had original Game Boy. I never got a Game Boy Color, never had a Game Boy Advance. And now I'm like, man, there's all this content for the last 30 years that I missed because I didn't play mobile games.
yep.
Yeah, the portable games were fun. Like I said before, they didn't get quite the attention that their console counterparts would, but there was some good stuff on the portable front.
Yeah. And another thing, too, I wanted to just bring up is, with the success of Castlevania anime on Netflix, Metroid seems like it would fit right in that slot, man. Just that you could have a cool anime set in that Metroid universe that would be great, and like that same sort of anime that the Castlevania is, like it would fit perfectly.
I would say that or a live action film similar to the Alien franchise.
Yes. Yeah. I'm yeah.
But
I think it's a franchise that would be perfect for any of those areas. Obviously we're kind of in that age of getting things like The Mandalorian and stuff where we get episodic material. So I would ultimately love it to be that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, a movie. I mean, it would be so good. There's so much to dig into there for story, and I mean, there'd be maybe some parallels drawn to Alien, but I think that it's got its own enough of its own personality to be its own thing. Um, yeah, yeah. And even if it was the anime though, like I'm with you with that. That would be amazing too, because it's just a really interesting story. And if there would be another way for them to tell it, another medium to tell it, as long as they don't tap into the mother brain from Captain N,
Yeah.
I'm good. So
uh, well, you just made me think about something would be awesome because you brought up the Mandalorian, because in Super Metroid the story was there's a baby Metroid that thinks Samus is its mother and then ends up saving the day in the end. Like we could have the baby Metroid, baby Yoda sort of thing going on where you got this cute little ugly Metroid that thinks Samus is its mom and she has to protect it from all these different bounty hunters. Like that would be pretty fun to watch.
I think it sounds perfect.
Yeah. Where's our
so
movie
many
chick?
so many great gifts waiting to happen.
I'm looking up speed runs right now. Just this okay, here we go. Here's the speedrun.com. Number 1 for this is regular. Yeah. 9 minutes 25 seconds 33 milliseconds. Yesterday, with the world record was broken for Metroid speed.
Holy crap.
How the hell do you do Metroid in 9 minutes and 25 seconds?
It's got to be some hacks, right? Not hacks like cheat codes, but like, level hacks.
Are they just going straight for the mother brain and just passing up Ridley and what was the other boss?
Kraid.
Yeah, they just passing up the bosses and just going straight to mother brain.
They'd have to be. I have to go watch this now because this sounds really interesting.
Oh, I was looking. No, the fourth place almost had me thinking it was you there for a second, Nate, because it's it's Retro Gaming 2084. I was like, if that would have said Dev, I'd have been like, what are you not telling us, Nate?
Yeah, right. No.
Yeah.
I was just looking at sales figures here, though, for the Metroid franchise. They've had 17.44 million copies of games sold in the franchise, which is pretty good. It looks like the GBA re-release might have the highest sales of all of them, even though it doesn't necessarily look like it has the best scores. But
yeah, what was the
nearly
original?
3 million copies sold? So.
Yeah, the original Metroid sold 2.73 million copies. Honestly, I thought it was more than that.
You'd think it would be, but I guess it's from so long ago that there was less of a gaming market then. So
because everybody I knew that had a Nintendo had it, and plus I really don't think they kept up with all that back then too. I think it's really hard to find out exactly what the sales numbers were on games back in the 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
It's hard to even get like exact release dates too, because nothing had a hard release date. It was just sort of like things were just rolled out, in over a couple of months.
Yeah, like whenever Kmart brought it out from the back room.
Yeah, exactly. What'd you say, Derek?
Quarter four, 1995.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's really where my knowledge of Metroid ends, is the Prime trilogy, because everything after that, I never really played, because I did, as much as I wanted to play Metroid Other M for the Wii, I never got it, and there really hasn't been anything since that. Which is
that's kind of where my experience ends too. I have a copy of Other M. It's still in the shrink wrap. I need to pop it open someday and try it out. Yeah.
Wow.
The Wii thing, for a while I was into it. I'm just not as into the motion controls anymore. So I'm prepared to like hate it, because who wants to be waggling a Wiimote around when I can just use a controller,
Yeah.
So get this, Other M came out in the United States August 31st of 2010.
So it's been 11 years since we've had a Metroid game.
Yep.
Is that the last one? Wow.
Yep. There's been nothing since. Other than, Metroid, Super Metroid, and original Metroid dropping on Switch, Super Nintendo, and Nintendo store. Other than that, nothing.
Well, hopefully they get Metroid Prime 4 figured out, and we get to have that before the end of this decade. So
yeah, well, honestly, as much as I'm ready for that game to come out, they need to put out something, and this is the 35th anniversary. So if they don't do anything this year, I'm going to be so disappointed in Nintendo, because this is one of your original big flagship franchises. Like, give it a little bit of attention, Nintendo. Come on, man.
We're only going to be here for so long buying games. There's going to be a point where we're going to be so old we don't care about it, and nobody else is going to care about it. So cash in now.
So maybe they'll do something this year for the 35th anniversary. We can just cross our fingers and hope. And it's going to be a while before we get a new Metroid Prime. So maybe they'll put out another trilogy of games like they did for the Mario stuff last year. Maybe we'll get like, the Metroid Prime trilogy, or hell, even, I don't know, like, just give us something, anything. Just let us know that you still care about Samus, because we do. We care about Samus and her adventures. Speaking of that, what did you think before we leave? What were your? Do you remember the first time you found out that Samus was a woman?
That's a
Well,
good question.
I was, uh, I think I found out when I was in grade school or in maybe middle school. I'd have to look. I'd have to think back. I mean, I think I played the game when I was like 9 or 10 years old. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I, I I don't think it was a big deal to me. Like it wasn't shocking to me. I don't remember ever being shocked by it, but I do recognize now looking back how significant it is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Girls in games back then were princesses or queens, you know, that needed
Yeah.
rescuing, and she was not. She kind of took care of business herself, so
Yeah, and I'm
it's good.
always seeing online people fighting over like, female protagonists in video games and who was the first and all this stuff and Samus never comes up and it bugs me. I'm like she was the first, like the first hero in a video game that you play and nobody remembers that. I just feel like people just like Metroid's just one of those games just people that just doesn't that people kind of just don't give enough credit to. At least
Well,
that's my opinion.
hopefully with the release of if they do a Metroid Prime trilogy remaster, that can be the spark of Metroid being relevant again.
I hope so because I miss Metroid. I miss playing, in that world, and that's something that is up there with Mario and Zelda. It's one of those franchises that it's the original huge franchise for Nintendo, and they just need to give it some love because we still love it and we want it. So give it to
Well,
us,
Absolutely.
Nintendo.
we have all the old games to go play. We'll have to do that for now, I guess, right?
Yeah. So, but that's gonna about do it for tonight. Thanks for coming on, Nate. It was a pleasure
Yeah,
having you on
Thanks,
again,
Nate.
man.
yeah, it's been fun.
Anything you want to throw out there before we leave tonight, where everybody can find your stuff?
Just head over to Twitter at Retro Gaming Dev. If you're at all interested in learning about my very slowly developing video game, head over to patreon.com/retro gaming dev. And otherwise, yeah, that's about it. I mean, Twitter is where I generally spend most of my time. So come and hang out.
Fantastic. What about you, Derek? What do you got coming up this week?
Yeah, just as always, check out the Derek Diamond Experience podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. And you can follow the show on social media at D Diamond Podcast.
As far as me, just go check out. I just got the domain openmikers.com. That leads you to our Patreon page for the Open Micers podcast. We just talked with Craig Williams earlier today. That's going to be our next episode. Go check out the Open Micers podcast at Open Micers on Twitter. I think that's going to do it for tonight, guys. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Sounds
Let's
good.
get on out of here. If you would like to email us, you can email us at nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. We are at nerdcaveretro.com. We're on Instagram and Twitter at nerdcaveretro and individually at jfunktastic, at Derek_Diamond, and at Retro Gaming Dev. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/nerdcaveretro, and of course our Patreon, patreon.com/nerdcaveretro, where you can go throw us a couple bucks a month and keep the lights on, and we do those cool extra episodes where we commentate on either movies or cartoons, all kind of cool stuff from back in the day, and everybody seems to like them. So go give us money, and if you can't, I understand. Leave us a review wherever fine podcasts are given away for free. So Derek, please tell them what it's all about.
Wow.
Master Blaster runs Bartertown.
Well, that was a fun episode.
I like
Yeah,
that.
it was.
The roundtable was fun.
That was nice.
Thanks for reaching out to me yesterday, and
Oh yeah.
I'm glad I was available. So
Yeah, I'm glad you're into the Metroid franchise because every time we do something like this, I'm like, I bet Nate's into that.
If it's from Nintendo or from the Nintendo Entertainment System, I'm into it. Even if I never played it, I'll talk about it.
Yeah. I love the Metroid games, man. Like I go back and still like every once in a while I'll just go back and not trying to beat it, but just kind of kick around in the original Metroid. I love going back and playing Super Metroid, but man, I really wish they would just give us a remake of all that mobile stuff we never got to play.
Yeah, this is definitely. I'm gonna be after talking about it so much tonight. It's gonna be my next games that I stream. Something Metroid. I don't know which one yet, but I'm gonna find something to stream. So.
Well, I would definitely suggest probably Super Metroid because it's a lot easier than the original Metroid because at least can see where you're going in that one.
Yep. Definitely.
Next week I'm going to be doing Resident Evil 3, and also we're doing our community night with Rampage. Rampage is going to be on the show next week. Rampage.
Well, I'll definitely be checking it out. I'll try to stop in live. Otherwise, I do listen all the time on Apple Podcasts. So.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Well, thanks for everybody for watching tonight, and join me. Probably I'm going to try to get back on Sunday afternoon to do some streaming. Hopefully, I'll have all my stuff set up and ready to go, and still got to get back to Ninja Turtles. I'm so close to beating that damn game. I got to the Technodrome last week or the week before, and it whipped my ass. But thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next week.